Hello, welcome to the Daily Henry George Daily Devotional, episode 26, 25, 26. Wait a minute. 5 times 5 would be 20. This is their 6th week. That's correct. And today is Tuesday, and everyone has been begging or crying out, where was yesterday's Henry George Daily Devotional? They could hardly function without it. Well, I was traveling, so. We will we will continue where we left off in Book 2, Population of Subsistence, Chapter 1, the Malthusian Theory, its genesis and support. Malthus, I guess, was the dude who came up with this idea that population increases exponentially and capital or wealth increases linearly, and so doesn't work out having lots of kids. Let's go. Now, as then, the Malthusian Doctrine parries the demand for reform and shelters selfishness from question and from conscience by the interposition of an inevitable necessity. It furnishes a philosophy by which Dives, as he feasts, can shut out the image of Lazarus who faints with hunger at his door. I remember looking this up a long time ago. I guess that's just a rich guy, somebody who is named Dives. And the rich guy can ignore Lazarus at his door. By which wealth may complacently button up its pocket when poverty asks an alms, and the rich Christian bend on Sundays in a nicely upholstered pew to implore the good gifts of the All-Father without any feeling of responsibility for the squalid misery that is festering but a square away. For poverty, want, and starvation are by this theory not chargeable either to the individual greed or to social maladjustments. They are the inevitable results of universal laws, with which, if it were not impious, it were as hopeless to quarrel as with the law of gravitation. So this is pretty serious stuff. If people believe in Malthusian doctrine, it allows them to tolerate the squalor of those around them. You need to look inside your own heart and ask yourself, when you walk past all those homeless crackheads, how do you justify it? In this view, he who in the midst of want has accumulated wealth but has but fenced in a little oasis from the driving sand which else would have overwhelmed it. He has gained for himself, but has hurt nobody. If you've fenced in a little oasis, you haven't hurt anybody. And even if the rich were literally to obey the injunctions of Christ and divide their wealth among the poor, nothing would be gained. Population would be increased only to press again upon the limits of subsistence or capital, and the equality that would be produced would be but the equality of common misery. I suspect billionaires sometimes think to themselves, yeah, I could give everyone $5, but would that really be such a, is that gonna actually change or help anything? Is this paragraph trying to say that money is a social construct? Tablecat asks. No, this paragraph is describing how believing in Malthusian doctrine can allow you, perhaps, to look at the poor and wretched and justify their situation as inevitable, and so not forcing the current system to not requiring any kind of change, because no change to the current system would actually help them. There would still be this inevitable conflict. Money talks about at some other points. And thus, reforms which would interfere with the interests of any powerful class are discouraged as hopeless, as the moral law forbids any forestalling of the methods by which the natural law gets rid of surplus population, and thus holds in check a tendency to increase potent enough to pack the surface of the globe with human beings as sardines are packed in a box. Nothing can really be done, either by individual or combined effort, to extirpate poverty, save to trust the efficacy of education and preach the necessity of prudence. Yes, the idea that you just have to tell poor people to get smart and be wise. A theory that, falling in with the habits of thought of the poorer classes, thus justifies the greed of the rich and the selfishness of the powerful, will spread quickly and strike its roots deep. This has been the case with the theory advanced by Malthus. And of late years, the Malthusian theory has received new support in the rapid change of ideas as to the origin of man and the genesis of species. That Buckle was right in saying that the promulgation of the Malthusian theory marked an epoch in the history of speculative thought could, it seems to me, be easily shown. Yet to trace its influence in the higher domains of philosophy, talking about the influence of Malthus, of which Buckle's own work is an example, would, though extremely interesting, carry us beyond the scope of this investigation. Okay? But how much be reflex and how much original the support which is given to the Malthusian theory by the new philosophy of development, now rapidly spreading in every direction, must be noted in any estimate of the sources from which this theory derives its present strength. The new philosophy of development. I'm not sure what George means there. Maybe he'll explain it in a moment. Is he just talking about labor? The wages for labor being commonly thought of as coming out of capital, and this being reinforced by Malthusian theory? I'm not sure. Let's see. As in political economy, the support received from the doctrine of wages, and the doctrine of rent combined to raise the Malthusian theory to the rank of a central truth. See, this is what happens when I don't read it for a week. What doctrine of rent is he referencing here? Because there's Ricardo's law of rent, which I thought George agreed with. I don't know. If you have been keeping up, straighten me out. Help me out in the comments. But I do remember his talking about this incorrect doctrine of wages. That was like all of book 1. And this is supported by this Malthusian theory, where there's just not enough to go around. There's just too many people. Anyway, so this raises Malthusian theory to the rank of central truth. So the extension of similar ideas to the development of life in all its forms has the effect of giving it a still higher and more impregnable position. Remember, impregnable means not pregnatable. Impregnable, not impregnatable. Agassiz, who to the day of his death was a strenuous opponent of the new philosophy, spoke of Darwinism as Malthus all over. Don't know this guy, Agassiz. Addressed before Massachusetts State Board of Agriculture agency, a report, United States Department of Agriculture. Okay. And Darwin himself says the struggle for existence, quote, is the doctrine of Malthus applied with manifold force to the whole animal and vegetable kingdoms. This is from Origin of Species, chapter 3. I've never read Origin of Species, any of its chapters. It does not, however, seem to me exactly correct to say that the theory of development by natural selection or survival of the fittest is extended Malthusianism. For the doctrine of Malthus did not originally and does not necessarily involve the idea of progression, but this was soon added to it. McCulloch, in note 4 to Wealth of Nations, attributes to the principle of increase, social improvement, and the progress of the arts, and declares that the poverty that it engenders acts as a powerful stimulus to the development of industry, the extension of science, and the accumulation of wealth by the upper and middle classes, without which stimulus society would quickly sink into apathy and decay. What is this but the recognition in regard to human society of the developing effects of the, quote, struggle for existence and survival of the fittest, end quote, which we are now told on the authority of natural science have been the means which nature has employed to bring forth all the infinitely diversified and wonderfully adapted forms which the teeming life of the globe assumes. What is it but the recognition of the force which, seemingly cruel and remorseless, has yet in the course of unnumbered ages developed the higher from the lower type, differentiated the man and the monkey, and made the 19th century succeed the age of stone? Thus commended and seemingly proved, or do we end? Yeah, we'll keep going. Thus, yes, we're almost done. Thus linked and buttressed the Malthusian theory, the doctrine that poverty is due to the pressure of population against subsistence, or to put it in its other form, the doctrine that the tendency to increase in the number of laborers must always tend to reduce wages to the minimum on which laborers can reproduce, is now generally accepted as an unquestionable truth, in the light of which social phenomena are to be explained. Just as for ages the phenomena of the sidereal heavens were explained upon the supposition of the fixity of the earth, or the facts of geology upon that of the literal inspiration of the Mosaic record. If authority were alone to be considered, formally to deny this doctrine would require almost as much audacity as that of the colored preacher who recently started out on a crusade against the opinion that the earth moves around the sun. For in one form or another, the Malthusian doctrine has received in the intellectual world an almost universal endorsement, and in the best, as in the most common literature of the day, may be seen cropping out in every direction. It is endorsed by economists and by statesmen, by historians and by natural investigators, by social science congresses and by trade unions, by churchmen and by materialists, by conservatives of the strictest sect and by the most radical of radicals. It is held and habitually reasoned from by many who never heard of Malthus and who have not the slightest idea of what his theory is. Nevertheless, as the grounds of the current theory of wages have vanished when subjected to a candid examination, so do I believe will vanish the grounds of this its twin. In proving that wages are not drawn from capital, we have raised this Antaeus from the earth. Not sure what Antaeus is. He was defeated by Heracles. He must have been a mighty evil thing, maybe. Maybe not evil. Yeah, so is Malthus's theory with us today? Very, very few people will openly say that excess population, the poor people, should just starve and die. That people are, you know. But I mean, what is the implication of saying that we're overpopulating the earth? It's hard to say it's not that, and it's hard to think of the way we view the inevitability of the condition of workers in third world countries. I don't know. I feel like most people view that as like those people just haven't gotten their shit together somehow. And my view is partly that, and then partly extractive, exploitative international organizations and corporations simply prevent them from developing. Yeah. And then they empower local power structures. But anyway, that's kind of wild claims by me. I don't know. Do you know any Malthusians? See you next time. Bye-bye.